Hello, third graders. We're going to be talking about a subject in math for the next couple of weeks that I really enjoy talking about it. And those are graphs and data. And if you remember from a couple of days ago, or I can't remember actually if I'll show you that video yet, but my husband talks a little bit about how this is a little bit about what he does for a living. So, what I was thinking about is how to introduce graphs and data, and I was thinking about it this way. Sometimes when I read a book, looking at a picture helps me understand the information a lot better, or just gives me more of a detailed idea of what it's all about. So one of the reasons why we take information that we know and we turn it into a picture, that also helps people understand it or see it in a different light. So our math focus today is I can identify the different parts of bar graphs and explain the meaning of their data. So we're going to be doing the second part of that, explaining the meaning of their data, over the next week or so. So today we're going to talk a lot about vocabulary for bar graphs. So let's look at a bar graph that I made with my kids, and we'll talk about all the different parts of it. So the very first thing that you may be wondering about is, what is data? And a data is a collection of information. So the data that I came up with my kids today is we talked about what is, I'm making it so it doesn't shine all over there, what is my student's favorite candy? So since you guys aren't here, we had to make things up a little bit. So that was the data or the collection of information that we came up with. So our bar graph right down here is titled Student's Favorite Candy. The title tells what the graph is going to be all about. So the next thing we're going to look at for this bar graph is we're going to look at what's called the labels. So I'm going down here to look at the labels. The labels are what we're talking about, or we're finding out the information about. So the student's favorite candy, our imaginary poll is between Skittles, Twix, Kit Kat, and Starburst. So those were the 4 different kinds of candy that we decided that we were going to ask people about when they said, what is their favorite candy? The next piece of information on a graph is the scale, where we talk about, it's a series of numbers at regular intervals that help label a graph. So what this means on the side, so we have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. We're counting by 2s here. This side is the scale. It's the number of students that liked each kind of candy, okay? But before we even get there, I realized I didn't really talk about what the definition of a bar graph. A bar graph is a graph that uses the height or length of rectangles to compare data. This makes it really easy for us to see how many students liked each kind of candy, okay? Like I said, it's a picture that shows, it's a picture that I could tell you all this information. I could say that 10 kids like Skittles, and 6 kids like Twix, and 8 kids like Kit Kat, and 4 kids like Starburst. But sometimes for people, seeing a picture of it helps them understand it even better. So these are all the different parts of a bar graph. So let's look at how you read a bar graph. So remember how I said right here on a side is the scale, and this scale has a title as well. It says number of students. So these are the number of students that liked each kind of candy. Right over here are the labels, like I said earlier. These are the 4 different kinds of candy that we asked our imaginary students about. So then what I do in order to read the bar graph is I look at the kind of candy, and then I look up to the right, and I find out how many students like that kind of candy, okay? So I can go to Skittles, and I can read on up, and I can see, oh, the bar graph is this tall. This means that 10, it ends at the top right here, that 10 students liked Skittles the best. Then I go to Twix, and I look at this bar right here, and I look to the left, and I kind of line up the top of the bar graph with the number of students, and I can say, oh, 6 students really liked Twix the best. Then I go to Kit Kat, and I look at this bar and read it up and go to the side. Then I would say 8 students like Kit Kat the best. Then we go right here and go to Starburst and look to the side, and I can say, oh, 4 students liked Starburst the best. So That's the information we can see from this graph. But we can also find out all sorts of other information that we're going to be talking about over the next couple of days. Like we could find out how many total students I asked by adding up the number of students who liked Skittles, Twix, Kit Kat, and Starburst. We could also try and figure out who liked what candy the best. We could also try and figure out how many students liked what candy the least. There's lots of information that we can find for a bar graph. That's why it's so important to be able to read it. Okay, like I said, the steps are what you end up doing is you go to each bar and then you look to the side to find out the information. So today for your homework, I'm going to tip it up here a little bit.